WCLN 1170 Radio and Cable Channel 16 are pleased to present We Should Know, hosted by J.W. Simmons, an upbeat, informative look at people, places, and issues facing our community. This education-based analysis of issues will remain positive and informative as we consider closely what we should know.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We Should Know is on there. I want to thank you for being with us today. I want to thank you also for your commentary from last week's show when we talked a lot about the forestry industry in North Carolina. Had some friends in from North Carolina State University, from Ag Extension, to talk specifically about some of those issues. Please keep us informed. We should know edu@gmail.com. We should know edu@gmail.com. We're talking to a face that you know, a person you know, been around for quite some time, John Swope, the economic developer here in Sampson County. John, technically, your title is the Sampson County Executive Director of Sampson County Economic Development Commission. And just a couple of quick things that folks may be interested in. You've been with us since July of 2003, a total of 13 years in the county. There's a lot been going on in your life prior to getting to Sampson County, and I just want to kind of highlight some of those. You worked in the Fayetteville area as the Economic Development Corporation over there. You've been involved in International Economic Development Council training, multiple economic development courses. You're a graduate of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in Business Administration and Management. And I want to quickly get to something that's kind of impressive to me. I always like to give a salute to the Boy Scouts of America. And you've been have honors and awards in Boy Scouts, and you're also an Eagle Scout.
Yeah, and I put that on my resume. Not that I've used my resume for years, but I put that on there to support Boy Scouts, not talk about me, but it's such a great institution.
It is, and one of those things, every time I see anybody involved or either participating in the Boy Scouts, and I look at that idea of an Eagle Scout award, that tells me they are committed to community and they're committed to this country. And it's just phenomenal the things that you've been through involved in economic development, and we're fortunate to have you here.
Well, thank you, and thank you for bringing up the Boy Scouts.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to kind of jump into economic development, and prior to coming on air, you and I talked a little bit about the kind of voluminous task that it is placed on an economic developer, whether you're in a small rural county or whether you're in a major metropolitan area. But some of the things that folks look at you and they think about results. And I want to hit some of those ideas on results to start with, and these are current numbers here. 8 regional projects being developed in Sampson County, 463 new direct hire jobs in Sampson County, 419,476,500 new taxable investments, 14,686 new property tax revenues. Look at each one of those numbers. When you look at that, and when you look at that, not so much as an achievement line, but what it means to people in this county, what is your sense when we think about that?
Well, you know, economic development touches everybody, and we're actually all involved in economic development. When we buy groceries, or we buy gas, or we buy insurance, buy an automobile here locally, we're participating, we're spending our money, or we save money at the local bank. But our role is trying to stimulate the economy. We do assist small business in any way we can, but your restaurants and your chain commercial businesses and retail businesses tend to be independent and work on their own. We try on a high level to bring in companies that are going to employ multiple people, so that they then become they have new revenue, new payrolls that they spend in the community. They also industry tend to invest quite a bit, and quite a bit's a relative number, whether it's a few $100,000 or tens of millions of dollars. They invest a lot in building and equipment, and they pay taxes on that. Even though they may and probably would receive an incentive, they still pay a property tax, and at some point that incentive's ends, and those property taxes continue to come in, and those property taxes to the county and to our municipality, if they happen to locate within a municipality, are important, so that the county and the municipalities can provide the services that our people want and in many cases need.
One of the things I think that and oftentimes, and you and I have talked about this previously, but that's probably a hard task for economic developer, and certainly here in this county, is trying to bring that right combination together, because oftentimes not only is location important, but folks will give pushback on certain kinds of industry, or if it's an environmental issue or whatever it may be. But the reality is it's one of two choices: services or the ability to expand growth of various kinds of economic development. How do you balance that? How do you kind of smooth those people that don't particularly want this? Yeah. And how do you get it to where the point is? And I'm thinking particularly in terms of Nova. That I think that's a perfect example.
Well, first I have to say, and this is more of a personal note to the people that are the viewers, that there's no way that I am, John Swope, or my bosses, the County Board of Commissioners, or the other leadership in Sampson County, there's no way we are going to sell our soul for anything. I mean, when we work with a company like Novi or any other company, we have vetted them. We have gone to their existing plant. We have talked to people. We are familiar with who they are and what they do. So we have every confidence that they would be a good industrial neighbor to Sampson County. So when we recommend a particular company on a particular site, it isn't because we're desperate or we're at a last straw and we're hoping to get them on this site. It's because it's recommended, that we've checked them out and we feel confident. We do need new jobs and investment, as we'll continue to say here, and as it said a few minutes ago, this helps pay for the services that the people of Sampson County, again, need or would like to have. But again, I wouldn't be here very long if I were to force or try to force something onto not only the people, but the leadership of Sampson County. I have to be of mind with them because they're the bosses, the leadership. They're the ones who support or don't support a company. So we have vetted, checked out, we have done our due diligence, and then when you get into the technical side, if it's an environmental question, then we rely. I am not an environmental scientist. There's a lot of things I am not. But the state of North Carolina, the citizens in North Carolina have heavily invested in a quality organization that does a great job. The DENR, North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. Then we have the US EPA. So any new operation, from the day that, well, even before they start up, they have to submit all their plans on their air cleaning, water cleaning, sewer cleaning, whatever they're going to do. They have to give approvals, and then they are periodically checked. So I don't have to be the expert. I can rely on the experts either in Washington or in Raleigh or other EPA offices, and then of course our state level authorities that we, well, mostly the company, has to comply with on a regular basis.
One of the things I think about some of these plants as well is not only are you on the front lines, and you mentioned the commissioners and others, oftentimes the commissioners actually visit a lot of these outside plants as you go through that vetting process. So the collective we is not just 2 or 3 people or somebody on the Economic Development Advisory Board. Mm-hmm. It is literally the very elected officials that's involved in that.
Absolutely. And when we get a prospect in, if it has any kind of anything to it that might be questionable, that people are going to have question about, I immediately take it to my bosses. My direct boss is the Sampson County Manager, Mr. Ed Causey, and at the appropriate time, he'll arrange for me to meet with the Board of Commissioners in closed session. And I give them background on a project, who they are, what they're proposing to do, who our competition is. So we're always in competition. So I'm introducing them to the project, and you're right, on several occasions, commissioners have traveled to other states to view their existing plants, to find out what they do, how they do it, talk to local people to see what their experience as a community has been with that operation.
One of the things that often comes up in these kinds of economic development approaches, and of course there's a lot of things you have going on, I call it almost like plates moving in the background, but folks don't really grasp, or some people does, some don't, this idea that certain things, as you just mentioned, closed session, industry does not want it put out that they're looking at a specific site. speak to that and kind of explain to us how that is an important issue, and you have a sense within your organization to maintain confidentiality until a certain point.
I'm glad you asked that, because now I get the opportunity for a few minutes, I won't take too long, to discuss that. Let's say you and I own a company, or we're the top officers or just officers within a major corporation. We may be looking at a new facility, either an expansion or a relocation in another part of where we are, region we're already located in, another part of the U.S. or another part of the world. We probably don't want our competition to know that we're considering a new location, whether it's a distribution facility or corporate offices or manufacturing. We probably don't want the competition to know. There's legal aspects to it. There's labor aspects. You may not want to upset your existing workforce. They may think that something's going to happen in their job when there's a good chance they're not. They're going to lose any jobs. It's just, say, an expansion. So when they're looking at Clinton or Sampson County, they're looking at other counties and states too. It may be other countries. And so it's a lot of competition, and we are required. We do get notices that says this has to remain absolutely confidential. Sometimes we're asked to sign agreements that we will not divulge any information on this project until after the project has announced somewhere, no matter where it is. Or we are in emails we've received as an introduction to a project. Quite often there's a statement in there that this has to remain confidential. They'll also state in those emails that if in the state of North Carolina any word gets out on this project, then the state of North Carolina as a whole, no matter who leaked it, the information, they will remove the state of North Carolina from contention in competition. And they would send that same type of message to all the other states they're looking at. So it's an internal company matter that they want these things to remain confidential. And I certainly understand, because there are things in my life or business life that we want to remain confidential until the right point.
We're going to take a quick break. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with John Swope, the Executive Director of Economic Development Commission here in Sampson County. We encourage you to call our friends. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a moment.
You're out for an evening on the town. Finally a chance to relax and forget that you left your front door completely unlocked. Fortunately, you just installed a security system from Star Communications. With just your cell phone, you can check on your house, lock it down, light it up, and get back to relaxing.
You forgot to put Buster in his crate.
Unfortunately, we can't help with that. Security and automation from Star Communications. Call today to find out more.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thank you for being with us. We're talking with John Swope, the Executive Director of the Economic Development Commission here in Sampson County. A graduate of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. 13 years in Sampson County, John.
Yes.
As you're kind of one of those folks in local government, it's getting harder and harder to get folks to step up, to get involved in some aspects of local government, simply because of salary, and private sector tends to oftentimes pay more. Jobs are very important. One of the things that you've got coming up, and I'm going to switch gears just a little bit and get back to some of the more substantive stuff about economic development, but you've got something coming up that's right at the heart of economic development, and that's the job fair.
Yes.
Talk to us about that, and when is this coming up? And it's going to be on a Saturday, so this is a pretty big deal. So.
Well, you know, we have in the past held 4 different small business summits where we had experts from local, regional, state, and national come in to assist small business and available to one-on-one talk to them. So we kind of switched gears a little bit, and in this past February, we co-hosted with the North Carolina Workforce Commerce, which is the former Employment Security Commission. Mm-hmm. We also co-hosted with our regional Workforce Development Board, Triangle South Workforce Development, the Sampson County Expo Center, and of course our Economic Development Commission. And we held the first job fair in February, and we are looking to we haven't set a date yet, but we felt like it was such a successful first job fair there at the Expo in February that we're looking to do another one during the first quarter of 2017. We have it on our calendars to meet in early August to begin discussions and planning for the second job fair. At the first one, let me look at the notes here that I have on the job fair. We had 21 employers, and we would like to have more. but the 21 employers had 67 representatives from their companies, and we had 246 job seekers that we counted that were there for this 3.5-hour job fair. And we felt like it was very successful. We were very pleased, and we were able to fund the job fair with all donations. So either from the companies that were there to seeking employees, or from donations we had received prior from other local companies. So it was 100% funded by non-taxpayer funds.
When you do these kinds of job fairs and business and industry folks come in looking for what I call talent, certain skill sets, those kinds of things, what is the kind of things they're looking for specifically? And one of the things I want to kind of zero in with that question is this idea that, in fact, Steve Troxler made a statement sitting where you are. He said, we've got to play to our strengths. Discuss what our strengths are right now in this area, and what kinds of things folks maybe need to be thinking about for employability if they choose to look at geographically Sampson and maybe the immediate surrounding area.
Well, you know, no matter who you are or what kind of employee we're looking for, or what type of operation, service, or business or industry that you operate, you want a good, dependable worker, somebody who's going to show up for their shift every day. They're not going to lay out, and that can be a problem. They're drug-free, because that's for a safety issue. That's not an opinion of whether drugs should or shouldn't be allowed. That's just pure safety. You
and
don't
that's
want
liability issues.
You can't have people get hurt on your workplace. They want somebody who's trainable, somebody who can learn the job that they're being hired for, but it may be 2 or 3 years to learn another job within that company, because things evolve. We all know that. Technology is changing, and technology is a good thing. So somebody who is adaptable, that's very good. So that's the challenge, is finding good workers. But we also, it really starts at the very beginning. When you walk in somebody's door, a business's door, again, it doesn't matter if it's a retail business or a restaurant or industry, you want to present yourself well, and you want to have a good resume, and a community college can help with that, to design a good resume. And you want somebody who speaks well. And when I say speaks well, it doesn't mean they speak the Queen's English proper, because I don't, but somebody who represents themselves well and can talk about, you know, their experience. Now, if you're new to the workforce world, or you're just out of college, or you just got your degree, no matter what level of degree, you may not have a lot of experience, but then you're talking about, well, what have you done in your personal life? So somebody who represents themselves well, shows up, you know, on time, and is willing to be a good worker. And if you do those things and others, then you have a chance for growth within a company and long-term employment. So
I think it's, and one of the things I wanted to kind of mention that, I don't want to spend, because I've got so many things I want to talk to you about, but I do think it's important for folks to understand that employability is a lot about what they represent, what their experience base is. It could be academics, but it's not necessarily academics. I know you and I have had this conversation in the past about skills that they have, and you mentioned community college, and the community college is there, and they oftentimes have these training skills, and I recall one conversation we had about welding, which is a very highly paid job skill set, and of course the community college can do that right here in this area, as well as other listening areas of this show. So what would you say to people, what in going into these job fairs? Look at the folks there, think about, should they list what they do? Should they list, oftentimes folks will say, well, I just want to, I'll be glad to tell you what I'm interested in, but business looks for outcomes.
Absolutely, and those individuals with the skills that they need, maybe not specific to what the job will be, meaning they can train them, but somebody who has the ability to learn. But you know, it's the more we improve ourselves, the more value we have to people, to employers, and the higher dollar we can get. And you know, money isn't everything, but it helps pay the bills. And if you're going to work 40 hours a week, you know, you want to make as much as you can, but to do that, you have to have skills. You have to have something that somebody else wants. for the dollar that they're willing to pay. So seek out counselors at the community college. You may not be a student now, but I imagine you could call or go out to the community college, and Sampson Community College, of course, and talk to a counselor and find out. You tell them what you're interested in, or ask them what's in demand. What to either office workers or industry, what are they looking for? And you and I have talked about, and we always need to repeat, industry are good jobs. Now there's I think a negative image of industry jobs, but they're not bad. They're good jobs. Quite often air-conditioned jobs, but they provide benefits quite often, and they're steady. We have this image of industry leaving the United States. Well, some have. Some are coming back, but a lot of them have stayed, and so we have a lot of steady employers in our manufacturing sector. So we have friends that have been with local industry for decades and retire with them. Mm-hmm. So they are very good jobs.
Absolutely. And the other thing I want to kind of segue into now is this idea, and a friend of yours, in fact you introduced him to me, Jimmy Oakley at the North Carolina Ports. Where are we at with that conversation? I know, and I think all have discussed this, and our listeners have heard this a lot, about transportation and transport and those kinds of things. Where are we at with our port in Wilmington, the closest one we have? Is there any movement to making that a bigger port for larger ships? Is that part of anything or any push with local government to make that happen? I know we did some visitations down there several years ago, and yes. Oftentimes it's like everything, something else comes up and you don't hear any conversation about it.
Sure. I can't speak so much to the actual numbers because my memory isn't as good as it should be, but I do know that the North Carolina ports are investing significant dollars into both the Port of Morehead City and the Port of Wilmington, such as bringing on new cranes that can serve the largest ships. They are going to deepen and widen the turning basis there at Wilmington. So when a ship comes up the Cape Fear River and offloads, it has to turn around. It can't steam around in a big circle. It literally has to do a 360 in place. And for the larger ships, they're going to need a larger turning basin. They are looking at deepening the Cape Fear River, which is, I believe, a 27-mile channel. But the problem there is, I think, when you get down to 42 feet depth, then you hit bedrock. And the ships are deeper than 42 feet, or the new ones. And so they are studying whether they can blast the bedrock and deepen it or not. There's a lot of environmental questions, the cost of that, who would pay for it. But the ports of, as I say, Wilmington and Morehead City have made significant investments, or are making, in the middle of to serve. Now they'll still remain smaller ports than major ones. I just saw an article this morning that said that the state of South Carolina and the state of Georgia are coming together and spending, I think it was $5 million to study building a 1,500-acre port on the border of their two states, and Savannah and Charleston are already significant ports, but this would be a whole new port. So we have some strong competition when it comes to ports, but we still need good service for our industries. Now, uniquely, Sampson County immediately is halfway between Norfolk and Charleston. That helps. Or if you go the inland of the state, up there in the Piedmont, they're actually as close to Norfolk or Charleston as they would be Wilmington. Mm-hmm. So a lot of our industries use Norfolk or Charleston. Not so much that they want to go out of state, is that the ports are not all equal, in that some ports have different services to different parts of the world and other ports don't have. So Charleston and Norfolk might be providing services to a port to other parts of the world that our Port of North Carolina, our ports here, don't have.
I think ports and this whole idea of transportation is critically important, and especially when we look at a technology age that we're in. And I want to be able to try to get to that technology piece when we come back from our break. John, as we talk about these kinds of things and mobility, it just struck me as we were talking about transport and stuff, and again, back to the community college, truck driving courses, those kinds of things are critically important. But we're going to go to another break, and when we come back, I want to try to segue in to this conversation about biotech and I know you serve on that regional or state board, which is critically important, but I want to talk about that, but we'll be back in just a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking with John Swope, our economic developer here in Sampson County. We're talking about issues, everything from jobs to transportation to communication. We're going to come back and talk about some biotech stuff. Stay with us.
Whether it's video, voice, internet, or cellular, Star Communications connects you to the things you love. It's what we do and have done for over 50 years. Star Communications, your local technology company.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're having kind of a lively discussion today. I always enjoy having John Swope with us, the Sampson County Economic Developer. He's the Executive Director. A former, I guess if you're a former Eagle Scout, you're always an Eagle Scout,
I guess
John.
so, yes.
So I always like to throw that in, and we talked about that from the beginning. I want to kind of segue in. We've talked about a number of issues as it relates to economic development, but I want to talk about the biotech sector a bit. And when we think about that, and of course you serve on a board here with a lot of other very distinguished folks that are looking at that movement and that sector, but you think about it from biofuels, biomass, the kinds of things that change over time, and as cost factors in other areas move and ebb and move back and forth, the emphasis becomes more important to biotech. Kind of give us where we are from your perspective on biotech for this region and what it may or may not be for the future.
Well, we'll talk about the energy sector on biomass, but before we address that, we can look at technology has added so much to everything in our lives, including biotech. And on one hand, biotech can assist our farmers by improving crops, making them more drought resistant, making them healthier, maybe even shortening of growing seasons. So biotechnology has been a tremendous benefit to agriculture in that way. Then also, I'm paying attention, and I'm sure our agriculture community is also, and we're looking, we talk about this together, is that opportunities that might arise from a local farmer or farmers growing a crop specific to serve a biotech product. So that opportunity hasn't arisen on a large scale. They up in the Research Triangle Park area, they're doing it in greenhouses on a smaller scale. But we're always looking for what opportunities can arise. But you and I have talked about and during the break talked about the energy sector, the biomass sector, and we've got several projects that are direct results from that are doing something different than the things that were not either. There was no technology, say 8-10 years ago, or they weren't financially viable, say 8-10 years ago. So we can start with Novi. Now Novi has selected 2 sites in Sampson County that are not in the Clinton Industrial Park that we attempted several years ago.
Make that clear.
Yes. So Novi is looking to develop 2 plants here, and they are small, maybe 4.5 megawatt plants where they will use agricultural waste, with a large part of that being hog manure, and converting that into methane gas, then using the methane gas to generate electricity that they upload to Duke Energy power lines. But that technology is fairly new. And when I say fairly new, it's I guess maybe 10 to 15 years old, but is very financially viable. So that they're very attractive projects. Then we have the Chemtex project, which hasn't started developing, but we're in regular contact with them. They are working through a number of factors that they can then take the project to what they call financial closing. It's like closing on a home or a property that you bought. There's a whole lot involved with it, but they have technology where they can use what's generally called energy grasses, miscanthus, switchgrass, and others that they use to produce ethanol. Now, no food crops will be used, so no corn or any other food crops, and they don't want to have these energy grasses growing on fields where food crops are grown. These will be less valued crop fields. But Chemtex will be a probably a $220 million project, of which about $170+ million will be taxable. It'll be 65 jobs at an average annual salary of $48,000 per year. And we hope that they'll be able to start up start construction on their site here in Sampson County probably in the first quarter of next year.
That's huge. When you mention those numbers, I want to back up to that $48,000 a year. That's a very good starting salary for folks in this area of the state.
That is the lowest paying job on that facility would be it's around $35,000 for operators, and those operators can be trained by the community college in tandem with Chemtex. So that's a very attractive plant, and then also it supports local farmers who decide to grow these plants, grow these crops.
I want to kind of look at this pellet plant as well. Kind of give us a little seed of that company and what that involves.
Well, I'm glad we didn't forget that one because they're getting so close to being in production. Enviva Biomass is a company that is the leader in the United States of exporting wood pellets to European Union countries. The European Union has mandated that their member countries replace coal, 20% of reduce their usage of coal in power plants by 20%, and these wood pellets make a perfect replacement. Their BTU value, their ability to be shipped, the availability of it. So it's a tremendous opportunity now for a company like Enviva to invest millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in these plants. They have to make sure that the feedstock, the availability of the wood is very viable, meaning if they come in here and in 5 years use up all the wood, then they're out of business. They've wasted their money on this plant. So they very closely study a region and make sure that they're not going to deplete it in any way, that it's a viable replacements of feedstock growing in the region. So they're finishing the plant that's on I-40 exit 355. That's the Faison exit. They're in Sampson County. It's about approximately $108 million taxable investment. They will be in production in August, probably early August, but in August. They have begun bringing in the wood feedstock that they'll use to make these wood pellets. And the pellets are very small, about the size of the tip of your little finger. They take wood feedstock, and the feedstock that they use would be the type of wood that would be left in the field after the loggers go through and get the more premium, the prime wood that's used for furniture.
It'd be kind of like chipping it.
Sawdust chips, limbs, anything that has a low value to it.
Right.
And so, of course, that increases the value to the landowner or to the logger, so they'll make more money. But they take these in, they grind them up, then into a dust, and then they form them into these pellets. And they'll ship them out of the Port of Wilmington. They have built a $40 million export facility at the Port of Wilmington to export them to the European Union countries.
That's one of the reasons I mentioned. I've had a number of folks would ask me, what is that on I-40 near Faison? What is that huge plant? So that's exactly what we're talking about now for our viewers and listeners. That's the kind of plant and that's the kind of industry that is helping everyone. From, as you just mentioned, if you've got a tract of timber and you sell that to a timber company, there's a certain amount of that timber they're not interested in. Now there's a market for that.
That's right. That's right. It's very exciting. There'll be 79 committed jobs, probably be a few more to that, but they've committed to creating 79. The average wage would be about, let me see if I have that. I don't have it specifically for that plant, but it's somewhere around $35,000, $36,000 per year, which is a good wage in our region. And they'll be here for a while. They'll be here for years. A plant like this is designed for 15, 20-year life, and of course they're always making improvements to a plant like that. So their business is to be in production for a long term. It's not going anywhere.
So I don't get a mass email burst on my computer. Tell folks just as this plant we're talking about here, we've mentioned several job situations. Where do they call now if they're thinking, well, where do I get my name on a list? How do I get interviewed for some of these jobs these guys are talking about? Can you give us a number? Do they call your number? Do they call?
Well, they can call our office. I don't have with me the number for Enviva.
Okay.
Enviva. I don't think I have it with me. But our phone number at the Economic Development Commission office is 592-8921, 592-8921. Now, I do know that Enviva, as of June 16th, had hired 68 of the 79 employees. I get very gratified, and it thrills me when a local, give you an example, a local businessman that we all know, I bumped into him at lunch a couple months ago, and he was very excited. He told me that his son-in-law had acquired a job with Enviva, was being paid, since I'm not identifying anybody, I can say what he told me, but he said he's being paid $50,000 a year and had a company car. And he was very excited. You can imagine that he's excited because his daughter's married
absolutely.
This young man.
That's huge.
But I love hearing that when I hear people say that they're a family member or a friend or somebody they know got a job with one of our industries, or especially new industries.
As we talk about this and we move forward, I want folks to kind of be thinking about the kinds of efforts that's put forward in the background that they never see. It's you don't see it in the newspaper, and certainly folks are not going to pull that curtain back. But literally hours of dedicated contacts, making things work. It's as though you're putting a puzzle together.
Absolutely. That'd be great to talk about.
Yeah, and I'd like to look at some of these other industry and also talk about some of the things that a report from the Chamber Foundation talked about 2016 as it relates to some of the things the industry is looking at. And I know you have already mentioned some of those kinds of things. And just as kind of a quick observation going forward, those kinds of jobs are the kinds of jobs you can expect here. And as a result of that, I won't, if you will, give your number out again, the 592-8921 number.
Yes.
If you are thinking about a job, if you're thinking about maybe Sampson County would be a good location, this region of the state, give you an opportunity. And also, John, when we come back from break, I want to kind of touch on this idea of kind of regionalization and collectivity, what that means. Because historically, folks have seen this kind of competitiveness between counties. And from what I read and from what I hear you saying is we're becoming more as partners in this movement. So we'll be back in a moment. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with us. We're coming up on our last segment here. We'll be back in a few moments, but call a friend, stay tuned. We're talking about economic development and jobs.
Give me a home where no burglar can roam, where my kids and their pets safely play. With security by Star, I can check in from afar, hit the lights, lock the door, night or day.
Really? Yeah, I can see my cameras, switch the lights, lock the doors, set the alarm, all from my phone.
Their prices are right, my home's locked up tight, Star Security makes me feel great.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We're coming up on our last segment. I want to thank all those folks at the radio station that mentions this show each and every week. Kind of helps us market the folks we have and the information, education pieces we have on We Should Know. Robert Stroud with the Boogie Shoes Radio Network. I appreciate Robert's commentary and mentioning our show, the early morning show, Grandpa, Nolan Z, the L-Man, and of course Wayne Weeks with the Gospel Hour. Nicole that introduces this show each and every week also does a show called the Country Store. We appreciate her and her commentary, and Tommy the Fly in the afternoon. So all of the folks at the WCLN that this show is simulcast with from Star Communications Channel 16, we appreciate your commentary. We're talking with John Swope, the Executive Director of Economic Development Commission right here in Sampson County. John, we went to break. We have talked about pieces of a lot of things today. We were talking about the energy side itself. I was talking with a fella here in the county that, and this is just kind of the innovative part of people in this area, has actually created a process to take lagoon animal waste, or any kind of waste as far as that goes, human waste, remove the particulates, return 99% of water, have the particulates in a form, in a solid form that can be used for fertilizer or whatever, and this the person has got this developed and has a working project. So we've not only got work talent here, but we've got innovative talent. And in fact, Jimmy Sinclair is the guy that has done that, and I had a conversation with him. So I don't know where that's going at this time, but certainly, we grow those seeds of innovation, but then we got to look back at it and say, where is the jobs and where are they looking at? I mentioned to you off air, and I want to kind of bring this to folks' attention, and you could probably go online and pull this up. In fact, I'm sure you can. It's called Spreading Economic Opportunity Across North Carolina. It's a North Carolina Chamber Foundation study. And one of the areas that was kind of intriguing to me, and I've heard you say some of these things, is the survey that they did in 2016. It was an employer survey needs aspect. It was 1,900 folks surveyed, and there's a list of things that were brought forward in a number of forums across the state. And it started out with, and I'm just going to mention a few of these and let you kind of elaborate on them. The curricula or curriculum in schools need to be more tailored to industry needs, that is to business people.
Yeah.
Students need to be exposed to more what their career opportunities are.
Yeah.
Where are you going? Where are you going to work? Increased work experience for young people, some kind of way with apprenticeships or others that they can say, look, I've tried this, and I'm good at this, whatever that may be. Other things that go down the list is improved ways to qualify credentials and measure skills. Those measurements, we've talked about this internationally with ISO 9000 international standards, become so critically important when you're out there and you're trying to entice these international businesses. And what is not international now? I think everything is.
Absolutely.
So I just thought I'd toss a few of those out and let you speak to that issue of kind of what is industry looking for, and of those jobs that may be paying $38,000 to $48,000 a year, what are the things I need when I walk through that door?
Well, it really begins with the core, the ability to do basic mathematics, because everything's involved with mathematics. We don't have to get into high level, because I went through the courses, but I wouldn't want to do them today. But the basic mathematics, the basic comprehension, reading, writing, ability to communicate. So the basics that then an employer or the community college for an employer can train somebody to be an electrician or a maintenance person. When I say maintenance, I'm not talking about a mop and a broom. I'm talking about maintaining machinery and equipment that costs hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. So the skill sets that our industries are looking for, and that if a community or even an individual has those skill sets, you can write your own ticket. If I go to the community college and become an industrial electrician or a tool and die person, and that's where you work with machining that does the drilling or the tool and die of the grinding or producing products out of metalworking or plastics, tool and die, you can make a nice salary, plus you can select who you want to go work for. And I'm not encouraging anybody to leave Sampson County or our region, but you can literally go anywhere you want. But industry, local industry and industry across our state and world are looking for people that have industrial electrician skills, productivity skills, are able to be trained to work with a machine and then be retrained in a few years, because that machine may change. Probably becomes more computerized. There's no such thing anymore as simple or low-tech manufacturing. For almost none of that. Even low-tech products are manufactured in high-tech machinery, that needs computers to run them. So when you're going to work for a production plant company, you're most likely there's a good chance of operating a computer or at least automated systems that you need to be trained to do. So, but again, if you go through that training, then you have the ability to select either locally or go wherever you want to in the U.S. and find a good manufacturing job. So it's critical that our young people look earlier than high school at job opportunities. Unfortunately, they may see opportunities that they think are their career paths on TV and leave out many other skill sets or opportunities that they may have. So they need to keep an open mind, talk to counselors, and learn what's in demand out there, and what do I need to do to get those jobs.
And I think when we look at some of those just more life skills, and you mentioned this early on, those things that we often don't look at that's critically important is the ability to, as one pretty major industry in this area, the guy that runs human resources said, show up on time. Show up for the job, and his commentary was more about folks that they had literally offered employment to, and over a period of 2 or 3 weeks, maybe if they're supposed to be there at 7 or whatever the time schedule was, those tended to start showing up a little later and a little later and a little later. I don't know whether that's a generational thing or what, but it is critical because people keep mentioning that.
Yeah. That's very true, and I don't know if it's generational or not. I'm afraid it might be, and I don't want to say that younger generation aren't sincere, good workers. Many are, but put yourself in a position to be in demand. Make yourself valuable to your employer, and that has to do with going to work on time.
What have you got to contribute?
Exactly.
This is what you bring to the work table.
Yeah.
Another kind of big area, and I want to remind folks, I'm basically, we could probably do a semester on what we're discussing today.
Yeah.
But another big area that seems to be out there and has been and continues to emerge is this whole area of logistics and distribution, warehousing and transportation of stuff. And to give people an idea of what we're talking about here is, for example, Amazon. Look at what they have done to put products at your door at a specific time, and to some degree that has become a large potential for employability and a large potential for an industry or business, and we have some of those in the area.
Absolutely. It's very interesting to listen to manufacturers or distribution companies and to learn about their distribution facilities or their processes or how they do it, because you're right, that's an ever evolving business sector, and the way they do it and what their demands are, and their competition. So Amazon has talked about some pretty inventive ways to deliver product to their customers, and their competition is listening, and they've got to be doing just as well. And that goes back to free enterprise. If we didn't have free enterprise, there would be one company delivering all the products, because there would be no competition. It'd be one company, and the service probably wouldn't be nearly as good. I would bet it would not be. So free enterprise is an amazing thing. You mentioned somebody a few minutes ago that locally here, I imagine he's a farmer, that was looking at on biomass and creating some technology to benefit from that. Use a waste product that he has and taking it to making it valuable for himself. That's free enterprise. That's entrepreneurship right there, and that's one of the great things about agriculture, because the farmers, free enterprise as an entrepreneur. Then in our region, you have the integrators in pork and poultry, and there's another example. And these are corporations. These are major corporations. When you look at Prestige or Murphy Brown, now part of Smithfield. So it's exciting, and that's one of the things we need our young people to understand is the value of enterprise and entrepreneurship in the world. They don't particularly have to start a company or start. That's great if they do, but they have to appreciate that who they're working for is a innovative person or an entrepreneur that's taking a risk. So the free enterprise system has been tremendous benefit and continues to be for the United States and the free world.
John, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I want to mention very quickly some other things that's going on here, and and it ties right back to you, is Kansas City Sausage. We got the 2015 Small Business Summit that was huge, and it continues to go forward to 2016, 2017. Dubois Strapping expansion, that was a huge operation. Brooks Brothers of Clinton, again, distribution center.
Yes.
$1 million kind of operation expansion there. These are the kinds of things we talk about and that folks sometimes don't see in the background. I want to kind of give you a few seconds to kind of close out anything you want to say or encourage the folks to call you or what have you. I'll give you a few seconds to do that.
Sure. Well, first, let me thank you for the opportunity to come on your show once again, and I look forward to doing it again. We often talk about maybe regularly doing that. So let's look at that, because there's so many things about economic development. And the first thing I need to say is economic development is not a one-person effort. I heard a story just a couple of days ago, a quote of Senator Jesse Helms. He said, if you find a turtle on top of a fence, he didn't get there by himself. So that's economic development. It's a more than a one-person job.
Thank you for being with us. We look forward to seeing you again next week on the radio, and may God bless.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of We Should Know with host J.W. Simmons. If you have a question, comment, or suggestion regarding this or any episode, please send your emails to weshouldknowedu@gmail.com. And remember to tune in every Tuesday at 2:30 for another informative episode of We Should Know.